Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Bolzachelli with Catholic Studies Academy. Today I'd like to address a question that many people have posed to me in the past. Um, the people find themselves confessing their sins, right? If you're Catholic, you go to confession, and they confess their sins. They find that they're confessing the same sins over and over again for protracted periods of time. It seems they don't know the last time they didn't go to confession and confess this sin. So they wonder, is there any hope for me? Am I just stuck with this sin? Am I really attached to these things? Do I love sin more than God? And people tend to despair, right? That maybe they're reprobate or something. But in fact, we find that it's common, right, for human beings to have this experience. And in the Catholic Church, we have this teaching about the seven deadly sins or the capital sins, right? This teaching is about a set of inborn vices, right? We're born with these vices. It's part of our fallen nature, and each person is constituted slightly differently from others. And some of these vices are more prominent in some than in others, right? So some people may have a problem with lust, others with pride. Most people have a problem with pride. I think almost everyone does. But some more than others, right? Some people have a problem with greed or with gluttony, and others not, right? But the sins that we're inclined to commit tend to express the vices that are prominent in our own lives. We should be aware of our own constitution so that we can guard against the sins that are likely to be the ones that we're inclined to commit. So that's the first part of the issue, right? That, of course, this is likely to be the case in a person's life because of their personal constitution. But does this mean that no progress can be made? No, it really doesn't. What one will notice over time is that the sins that one um, commits repeatedly are different over time than they used to be, right? So I had an experience in confession one time like this, right? I was noticing in confession that I had confessed the same sins over and over again, the same sins this time as the last time, as the time before that, and I had that wasn't a new idea for me either, right? At the time, I had thought about that many times, but this time, this was many years ago now, but I had this experience. But this time, as I was reflecting on it, I also realized that I was not confessing certain sins that I had been used to confessing in the past. That the sins that were being repeated in my life over and over again at this point were different sins than had been repeated over and over again for me at a previous stage in my life. And thus I had realized that I had in fact grown spiritually. I, I was delivered from certain kinds of sins that I no longer was generally inclined to commit. And while one might think that I'm just expanding my horizon of sin, that I'm just experimenting with new sins I hadn't tried before, that's not really the case. Perhaps the sins that I was then confessing were of a similar genus as the others, but more subtle, buried, right? That one would not have easily perceived as present in a previous state in which I was confessing other sins, right? That were more prominent and more obvious. So it's a mark of spiritual growth, actually, right? That one discovers that the sins he's confessing over and over again are different than they used to be. This shows us that we're actually growing spiritually, that we're being delivered little by little from those things that bind us in this world, and that the good work that God has begun in us, he will bring to completion.